It is indeed week 15, the fantasy semifinals, unless you're playing into week 17,
Ugh.
which if you're doing that, I'm sorry for whoever clinches the 1 seed. But let's talk about this last week before the championship. And ladies and gentlemen, we're back with another episode of the one and only RotoHackers podcast. My name is A.J. Herschel, also known as The Kid, and I am joined by the absolute stud, Mr. Number 1 seed himself. It's Jared. And Judah Buddha, the other disembodied floating head you see on our intro, is on assignment, and he's not going to be able to join us today, but we're still here holding down the fort. How's it going, Jared?
It's going well. I had a pretty good week. How about you?
Not bad. I mean, obviously capped off with The Mandalorian on Friday, which was great. And time is speeding towards December 25th, so it's been quick.
Yeah. We just spent a while talking Star Wars prior to the broadcast. Part of me is just like, let's not even do fantasy football. Let's just do Star Wars. But I suppose we have an obligation to do some fantasy football. So, So the other thing from fantasy football is we did get off to a Thursday night start like usual this week. Had Chargers Raiders. If you had Justin Herbert, you're probably off to a good start. If you had Josh Jacobs, you're probably off to a good start. If you somehow inexplicably chose to play some of those lesser Charger receivers, you're probably you're probably off to a good start. So it was an interesting game. I've got a lot of Herbert stock. I didn't play him in, but also like almost every team I have him on that's in the playoffs also have Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Ryan Tannehill. And so I didn't have a ton where it was just Herbert. So all the ones where I had just Herbert, I started him. A lot of the others though, I mean, I was worried, like not, knowing Keenan Allen was going to be limited, knowing Mike Williams was going to be limited, knowing it was going to be a Thursday game. So, I really couldn't bench Patrick Mahomes for him in almost any scenario anyway, because, Patrick Mahomes might go off for 45 on any given day. Kyler, I think, also has a pretty good matchup, even though he's kind of been on a downturn. I don't think that Philadelphia defense is quite as good as it seems. Like mostly it's, sort of a case where they play in the NFC East. So they're playing a lot of bad teams. So, so I think he can have a good game. So I'm curious. And then, today we get, Broncos, Bills today.
Yeah. Yep. And also Packers Panthers, the two games that no one is going to care about in the grand scheme of things. But hey, it's still football. And Ray Gibson already in the comments section, what's up, man, says, don't forget about Waller, who probably basically won people a game already.
Yeah. And and that's true. I don't have stock in Waller this year, unfortunately. So I kind of tend to forget about him, but he had a great game too. Wow. I'd forgotten how good of a game, 25.5 from that tight end position. Fortunately, I don't think I was playing against him in any of my, let's see. Oh, maybe I was playing against him in one league. Yeah. In a $20 league, I'm playing against him. So that's probably going to sink me in that one. But for the most part, I dodged Darren Waller, which is good.
That's good. Yeah. For me, I unfortunately benched Herbert in 2 leagues, but I'm projected to win those. So hopefully that holds out. Good. And I defaulted for Josh Allen and Russell Wilson against Washington. So, I mean, the Wilson one is a coin flip. Eckler, unfortunately, did not tear up that Vegas defense like I was hoping he would.
Yeah.
It was very disappointing to continually see Kalen Ballage get goal line carries. That was not making me very happy. And I don't know. Do you think that was just a a 1 week thing since it was Thursday? He was questionable coming in, or do you think that's going to be something that permeates in the next week?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta wonder what the deal is. I mean, I think part of it is just the Chargers. Offensive line is not that great. I mean, the thing about Eckler is he's still, he basically had his usual carries. He had his usual rushing yards.
Yeah.
But kind of the difference, this week was he didn't do as much in the receiving game.
True.
And I think part of that was just, the Chargers were able to heave the ball down the field, a good bit. So I'm not sure, if the Raiders were, maybe focusing on that short receiving game a little bit more to try to take him away, because he's had a couple of games of double-digit receptions, not just double-digit targets, but double-digit receptions. Even the previous 2 games, he had 9 targets and caught all 9 in one of them. And so for him to only have 4 and 19 yards was where it really hurt him, especially when he didn't get a touchdown. Yeah. But, then there too, oddly enough, he's only had, even though it is a limited season, he's only had 1 touchdown all year, which is kind of crazy. But I would think that's probably just a 1 week thing. Denver's not the best matchup next week, but it's not as intimidating as it looked at the start of the season. So, I would still be willing to give him a shot next season. And I might actually have a chance to pick him up in a league because one of the leagues that I'm in, we had a player, it's $100 league. And so the guy did the thing where he was out of it. So he just dropped all of his best players. So his 3 best players were Chris Carson, Chris Godwin, and Eckler. What? And fortunately I had a higher waiver priority than the other teams that were in the playoffs. And so I picked up Chris Carson this morning. Nice. So I got Chris Carson, and then somebody else got Godwin, and somebody else got T.Y. Hilton. And so Eckler actually comes back around on waivers then Tuesday. So maybe I'll get a chance to pick him up again. But my opponent didn't pick up anybody, so that's good. So it actually worked out to benefit me. But
very nice. I also greatly enjoyed seeing Marcus Mariota constantly overthrow Nelson Aguilar and change me from a 17-point underdog to a 33-point underdog in Jared and I's matchup this week. That was beautiful.
Yeah, a couple of those Raiders matchups worked out pretty well for me too. There, yeah, like Aguilar did not do so well, and then in another league, a guy sort of randomly started Hunter Renfrow against me. This is that same $100 league where I was able to pick up Chris Carson. A guy has has Hunter Renfrow. He's got a great lineup apart from that, and then just randomly he started him. So Renfrow went out with an injury, concussion, and so I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting. Well, we already got some questions. First off, Clayton Witt says, "What's up, fellas? What's up, Clayton? Thanks for tuning in."
What's up?
Robbie Anderson, Cole Beasley, Raheem Mostert, or Leonard Fournette at the flex PPR. He's looking for a safe floor here. If he's looking safe floor, my first instinct is Robbie. What do you think, Jared?
I think you probably got some multiple safe floors there. John Brown's going to be out another week for Buffalo. So, Beasley is a semi-safe floor, but he also tends to, he's at least, he's going to be in there and he's going to get some opportunities, but at the same time, he'll have some games where it's 3 catches and then he'll have them where it's 10. So it swings a little bit with him. Let's see what the latest is on Ronald Jones, because so Ronald Jones, I guess, is on the COVID list. I guess that was from Wednesday. I think I've somehow forgotten that. So he's going to be out. Looks like it'll be Fournette. I guess we talked about the possibility of, it could still be McCoy in for Tampa. Mostert's got the golden matchup with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
If it looks like he's going to get, the majority of the share of touches, it would be hard for me to go away from him. I like Robbie Anderson. I know he's been pretty consistent with his floor this season. The Packers matchup is not the best. They give up the 6th fewest to wide receivers. Maybe if you're looking floor, I mean, Robbie's been at or close to double digits almost every week. He had a game of 4. He had a few of like 7 and 8, but 2/3 of the time or so he's getting you 9-10 points. It's probably not going to be a blow up game. So AJ might be right. If you're really most concerned about the floor, maybe Robbie's the way to go, because Mostert could re-injure himself. He could be hurt a little bit more than they're saying, and maybe they go more towards Jeff Wilson. That's a tough one. That would be a tough one for me, I think, to leave him on the bench, just knowing like what teams can do to that Cowboys defense. But if you're most concerned about the floor, yeah, Robbie's probably safest.
Yeah. I think like I said, I think I would go Robbie on that one. I like Beasley a lot, but like Jared said, he either gets 13 targets or 3. And that's definitely not something I really want to mess with if you're just looking for a safe floor. Fournette, I like, but I also don't know if Brady's just going to explode on Atlanta. And Jeff Wilson Jr. is taking like half the carries in San Francisco's backfield. So I don't know. I've stopped trusting San Francisco backfields once Jerick McKinnon stopped getting the ball. I was like, okay, right. So I'm just done now. Robbie Anderson always gets consistent targets when Teddy Bridgewater is throwing the football. Bridgewater is going to be starting this week. I'd go Robbie Anderson on that one for the safest floor, I think I would say. Todd Eldred says, what's up? Made it to the finals, week 1 of 2 for the title. Let's go. Nice. Should he keep riding Josh Allen, the Stallion, or flex Tom Brady versus Atlanta in that golden matchup?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Brady has just sort of like how we talked about with Beasley, where it's like 3 targets or 13.
Yeah.
With Brady, it's like he's either going to give you 15 points or 30. And there's there's been a few instances in between, but again, I'm just looking through Brady's, season, and it's 14, 14, 14, 15. And then you've got some, 31, 36, 33. So you're getting a lot of, kind of all or nothing with him. That's a really tough one because, Josh Allen obviously has a tougher matchup there. I'm gonna punt this one to you for a second while I research a couple of things.
All right, this is a tough one for me. I really like Josh Allen. I'm gonna be honest, and I kind of want to stick with him because Denver is gonna be tough, but I feel like they're gonna be throwing a lot, and they're playing today too. So that is actually a matchup you need to decide on in like the next few hours.
Yeah.
But Brady, Atlanta is number 1. I think worst against quarterbacks. And with Rojo out, I think that does make it a little better for me because I don't think they're going to be willing to run the football as much. Granted, Rojo may come back. I know Bruce Arians said they might take him off the COVID list. I don't think he has COVID. I'm pretty sure he's just a close contact, if I remember correctly. But I think I'm leaning towards Josh Allen. I think this is kind of what Judah always says, dance with the one that brung you. Josh Allen's gotten you this far. I don't know if I want to deviate from that, even though Atlanta is such a good matchup. I think Allen's got the safer floor. Brady's got the higher ceiling. I think I'll say that. Allen, I think, is guaranteed to probably get you 18, but Brady is more likely to blow up and get 40 points. I think that's what I'll stick with. I think maybe a little bit of my wariness was just seeing what happened to the Bucs against Minnesota, because that was a game I thought Brady was going to blow up in. And he finished with 19, which isn't bad, but this is still a seriously unexperienced defense. They ran the ball a decent amount of the time. He wasn't slinging it all over the field, but I think if safer floor Allen, you need a high ceiling Brady. What do you think?
Yeah, if this was the Atlanta at the start of the season, I might be a little bit more inclined to go with Brady. But I think it's just just riskier. I think it's just riskier with Brady. Last week Justin Herbert in what, or let's see if I'm not sure if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, against Atlanta, had what looked like a pretty golden matchup, and really it was kind of pedestrian. It was 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. I just don't, and Brady's age and everything, you're getting towards the end of the season. That starts to worry me a little bit. So I've got leagues where Brady's my best option, and so I'm gonna fire him up without any real hesitation. If he busts, he busts. It's a good matchup, but in a situation where I've got the option of Josh Allen, and I'm not a start your studs guy. I'm not a use the one who got you here sort of. I don't subscribe to that, but I think you have to make more of a case. I think it has to be a clear-cut case for why you should go with someone else over the guy. So I would go Josh Allen. Yeah.
All right. He also says, should I go DJ Moore, my man Marvin Jones Jr., MJJ, or Willie Snead the fourth? Because everyone but Dez is on the COVID list in Baltimore. And the only way those wide receivers get off is if they all test negative. And I think their tests come in either tonight or tomorrow morning. Jared, what do you think? Moore's got a tough matchup in Green Bay.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, I'm not sure if you saw it this morning, is that Matt Stafford is now actually projected to start. So that's a little bit risky, obviously. Less risky for Marvin Jones because he's going to have someone throwing to him at least. But that makes you feel a little bit better about Marvin Jones. If he only gets a half of Matt Stafford, then that's still not bad. The Titans aren't a great pass defense. If Stafford starts, I think I would be inclined to go with him and risk it and say, okay, maybe Stafford is in there for at least for a while, if not the whole game. Maybe Chase Daniels can still do well enough because he had a decent relief performance last week. And the Titans aren't a great pass defense. So I would go with him. Marvin's getting the targets. Obviously had a tough matchup last week where he didn't really do a whole lot with those 8 targets, but I think he can get double-digit targets and double-digit points. Yeah,
DJ Moore I like as a player, but he's also going to be the deep threat in Green Bay because that's what he's been all year. If Robbie was out, he'd be the easy stardom for me. If PJ Walker was quarterback, Moore would be easy stardom for me. But I think if Stafford's going, I like MJJ. Willie Snead, he isn't a bad choice per se, but there's still the possibility that the Ravens are going to have people test negative on either tonight or tomorrow morning. So Hollywood could be back, and Boykin could be back. Also, this is a Ravens team that I think is just going to be running the ball into the ground against a Jacksonville team. So I'm high on Dobbins. I'm high on Lamar this week. Mark Andrews, I think, could have a really big week. So I'm not as inclined to go with Willie Snead. I think that's a little more of a long shot. And since this is PPR as well, I think I'm going to go Marvin Jones because I like Moore because he has the potential to get you an 80-yard touchdown or a 60-yard catch every single game. But Marvin Jones is always going to get consistent targets with Stafford playing. I think I'll go Marvin Jones, and I know you got to make the decision tonight because Moore is going on Saturday Night Football for Packers-Panthers tonight, but I think I would stick with my man Marvin Jones Jr. on this one. Well, that's all the questions we got for a second, and there is one really big piece of news that I was not expecting this week.
News in the NFL today.
So Drew Brees is back?
Looks that way, yeah. I mean, again, that's kind of like him and Matthew Stafford both. It's like What do we do with this here?
Right.
So obviously that's a big blow for anyone who was going to be starting Taysom Hill and didn't also have Brees, because initially, the timeline, I actually picked up Brees in a couple of leagues where it looked like that, where I didn't have that strong of a quarterback option, and it looked like he was going to be back for week 15. Well, we got to this week, and then it's like, okay, well, I guess he's not going to be back after all. And then now he is. So I do have a decision in terms of, like, I picked up Phillip Rivers to see if he can, if he and T.Y. Hilton can just burn the Texans all day. Brees is a little bit tougher, especially because, and again, the parallels between Brees and Stafford just keep going, because both of them are going to be without their top receiver, because of course Kenny Golladay is like still floating around the phantom zone somewhere. And then now Michael Thomas is going to rejoin him because Michael Thomas is out again. So yes. So I think I'm going to go with Rivers over Brees, but I don't, that's a tough break for Taysom Hill owners who, don't really have another great option now.
Yeah, it really kind of came out of the blue for me, where it was just a Friday morning or Thursday night, whichever it was, and Sean Payton was like, Brees is active. And one of my games went for me like 60% winning down to, or 65 down to 58. And I was like, what happened? And then the dude starting Drew Brees. I'm worried about him. He's playing Kansas City. This is a very good defense with a good front seven, and the safety with the most interceptions in the league among his position in Tyrann Mathieu. He's not going to have Michael Thomas. I'm scared for the Saints and also Brees, because I don't think I've ever seen someone come back from a punctured lung, or almost punctured lung, in like 3 or 4 weeks. I have no idea how he's going to come and perform. I don't know if this is like his warm up for the playoffs and they're just trying to get him, just trying to get him ready for it. And it's more like game practice and game script dependent. I don't know what to do with him.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough to really fire him up, I think, in that matchup. I would assume just sort of the position that New Orleans is in, fighting for a playoff spot. They see this matchup with Kansas City and think, okay, I don't know if we can do this with Taysom Hill. Because they're still pushing, the Saints and Green Bay are both 10-3, so they're competing for that number one playoff seed, or at least, one of the top two there. The Rams and Seattle are both right behind them at 9-4.
Yeah.
So every game here for New Orleans is big, especially when Green Bay on the other side gets the Panthers today. And then they get Tennessee, which is tougher, and then Chicago. So
and they can't tie him because the Packers have the tiebreaker of beating them earlier in the season.
The Packers have the tiebreaker. So if you're the Saints, you really need to hopefully win out,
right?
And hope that the Packers, maybe lose to Tennessee or something like that. If you drop one, then you're needing the Packers to lose 2, and that gets kind of tough. So this is obviously the toughest game on not only on the rest of their schedule, but their toughest game all season, probably with the Chiefs. So they get Minnesota and Carolina. So I think it's just Brees probably looking at this being his last season, how badly he wants to win a Super Bowl. And just saying, oh, we got to go for it. So, he may, I'm guessing he's probably still got discomfort and soreness. He's probably just gotten to the point where he's like medically okay. They don't think there's any increased risk of, refractures or his lungs okay and all that. And he's just like, look, this is my last chance. I'm ready to go.
Yep. Oh my goodness. In other news though, Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay are both questionable So that's fun to deal with. Mike Gesicki's questionable as Ezekiel Elliott, and fire up all your Calvin Ridley because Julio Jones is out, but they're playing Tampa. So what do you think is going to happen to Ridley? Because we've all seen the stats of when Julio plays, they do well, and when he doesn't, they're not very good. But last week, Ridley did fine. He had a very good game, but now they're going up against the Tampa Bay defense. So do you think Russell Gage could be a good flex play? What do you think Ridley's going to look like against a very good pass defense in Tampa?
You got to start Calvin Ridley. There's just no, he is among the top players that there's no way benching him. He's been in double digits every week, except for that weird Green Bay game, and not just, in double digits. His lowest was 11.5. And apart from that, his lowest was 13.3. So, wow. In 12 out of 14 games, he's gotten you at least 13.3 points. I don't know that he's going to blow up against them. He finally did have a, sort of a blow up game against the Chargers, which was really his first since the first couple games of the season with Seattle and Dallas. Tampa Bay has sort of been sliding a little bit though over the course of the season. So at this point now they're, they've given up the 11th most to wide receivers. They're still not like a bottom pass defense or anything like that. So it's still not the friendliest matchup, especially with Julio out, but you just put Ridley in there and hope that he gives you a good game. The list of people that that you would sit him for. I don't think there's three others out there that I would be willing to sit him down for as consistently as he's played. Devontae, DK, I'm not sure who else off the top of my head, but Ridley has been as consistent as anybody this season.
Very true. Todd Eldred says, fun/sad story for a guy in my league. His team consisted of Michael Thomas, Chris Godwin, Austin Eckler, Miles Sanders, Raheem Mostert, and Tevin Coleman, and he changed his team name to Who's Left.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brutal.
I feel his pain. I had a team that was similar. Especially this time of year, even in a regular year, you can just be down to where your team looks like an infirmary or something.
Yeah.
That's a tough season. Yeah.
Yeah, I even had one where I scrapped my way to finish 6th, but I had a rough go of it because I drafted Saquon. Drake did nothing for half the year. I drafted DJ Moore. Juju did nothing, and Fournette got traded. It's that entire first 6 weeks was just absolute terror and chaos at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Sorry, just randomly looking on. I was looking at my email for a second here, and all of a sudden I've got packages that I ordered a week ago or a week and a half ago that are just lost in limbo, and then I've got one that I ordered yesterday that it's like your package has been delivered. I'm like, what? So
okay then.
Anyway, sorry, just random distraction. Sorry, what were we talking about again?
just talking about drafts and rough drafts.
Drafts. Yeah. So I'm glad that I went in mostly on $20 teams this season. That's the majority of what I had. I just didn't put I still put a fair amount of money into it, but I just didn't put as much as usual because all the X factors of COVID, and I didn't realize how bad injuries were going to be. So I'm glad that I did that. I hope this season is just sort of a one-off in terms of the injuries. But yeah, it was a rough first round, especially for people this year. You look at McCaffrey, basically a wasted pick. Saquon Barkley, a wasted pick. Ezekiel Elliott. You got 5 maybe good games out of him. Now I have a league where it's my best team. It's 13-1. But it's not as good as that record indicates. I've got teams with less I've got teams that are like 9-5, 8-6 that are just stud teams that just had bad breaks. But so it's 13-1. My two running backs at the start of the season, I had CEH and Zeke. I think I spent up on them. Well, neither one of them are going to start for me this week in the playoffs. I'm going to start Cam Akers and Mike Davis, and I've got a good receiver to flex. There's no way I'm throwing Ezekiel Elliott out there against the 49ers, and CEH against the Saints could do something, but I've got better options. So it's funny to see, like, you spend all this money on guys in auction drafts, and then all of a sudden you get to the end of the season, you're like, nope, I don't care what I paid for you. I'm not starting you. So it was a tough. Michael Thomas, again, one of the guys he mentioned, Thomas had just a few good games, but has largely been, MIA most of the season. So, half of the first and second round picks this year, just total busts,
Yep. Before we hit TS's question, just want to remind everyone, if you haven't already, be sure to join our Discord that we have. We got a lot of really great people in that, just some good fantasy football and regular football discussion. We got some pretty decent stuff, pretty active people up there. And MathQuest is one of those guys. Says, "What's up, RotoHackers? What's up, MathQuest? Thanks for tuning in with us." TS says, sit one PPR, Deontay, Godwin, or Cam Akers. Ooh, that's tough because Deontay gets 13 targets and catches half of them. And I don't know what Tampa's going to look like. I think Cam Akers is the one I definitely don't sit.
Right.
Great up, 170 yards. There's no way I sit him. I think I might be leaning sitting Deontay. I don't know if I can pass up Godwin versus Atlanta.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And I think it's kind of made tougher by Godwin last week, inexplicably getting 3 targets and 2 catches for 25 yards against Minnesota. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. Deontay, I think he'll bounce back. It scares me a little bit, just in the sense that I think there's a chance, that they get up big on Cincinnati, but at the same time, they can't really run the ball to run the clock out, so they're going to have to keep throwing the ball to run the clock out. This is a hard one for me between Deontay and Chris Godwin. Like you said, I don't think you can sit Cam Akers against the Jets. Although we say that, and then all of a sudden, Sean McVay will then go back. He'll be like, okay, well, this is Darrell Henderson's week to get 30 carries, and Cam Akers gets 2. So I'll go ahead and
Malcolm Brown time.
It's Malcolm Brown time. So I'll go ahead and throw that out there as always being a possibility.
Yep.
The other thing too is, in the COVID era, the Steelers don't play till Monday night. So you're risking the possibility that, like, Deontay Johnson could test positive or something. And, I don't know what the statistical odds of that are. I think if you're wanting to be a little bit safer, I guess I would go Chris Godwin for the matchup, and looking for a bounce back, and the fact that he's going to play Sunday and you don't have to hold out for that guy on Monday night. Still a little bit hard for me to sit him over Deontay. All things being equal, I would probably go with Deontay, because the Steelers just can't run the ball. And so I think they'll just have to keep throwing. So if you feel like maybe taking a little bit more of a risk, if you need maybe some upside there, I might go for him. But otherwise you're probably safest going with Godwin and Akers.
Yeah, man, Deontay is just such an enigma to me. Recently, I think he's had less than 50 yards in back-to-back games, only 1 touchdown in the last 4 games. Pittsburgh is disintegrating before our very eyes as just an offensive team in general.
The most overrated 11-0 team of all time.
Yeah. And to be fair, they've been through a lot this year. Like Tuesday games, Wednesday games, 13 straight weeks with no bye. I mean, granted, they have had the roughest time out of basically any team in the NFL. And then they go play Buffalo, and we realize this team can't run the football to save their lives.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'll go with you on this one. I think Godwin and Cam. Even though, like you said, yeah, what's Pittsburgh gonna do? Run the football?
Right. I mean, they just have to, and he's the guy that gets the target.
That's
so
true.
that's why it's painful for me to bench him. But I think all things considered, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. TS said he scored the second most points in one league and came in 9th. Such a strange year. That's brutal, man.
I've seen that. I've seen that before. I had a buddy who had, I think he had the most points in the league and finished like 9th a couple years ago. That's just and I had some of that. Some of my best teams finished like 5 and 9. Just. I mean, it was a weird year. It was a weird year. I went into the season thinking that we could have potentially a lot of teams get in at 7 and 7. It didn't really work out that way. Like it's in most of my leagues, it seemed like it worked out more to where there was still a lot of parity, but in most of my leagues, there were a lot of like 2 teams that would just be 1 and 14, 2 and 12. And so people would beat up on those teams and get wins against them and figure out a few others. And so there was still a lot of parity, but it wasn't really always in the 7 and 7 range. Sometimes it was, but a lot of times it would be like all the teams being 9 and 5 or a bunch of teams being 8 and 6 and stuff like that. So there was a ton of parity, but not necessarily, right at that 7 and 7 mark. So it was a weird year. And I had a team where I don't know if I mentioned this on our last broadcast or not, but this was my best team, and I'm in a ton of leagues. I'm in like 30 leagues. So way too many leagues. Goodness. This team out of those 30 leagues had the most points of any team, because I went through to check this, of any team out of those 30 leagues, any of my opponents. So 300 teams. You got 10, over 300 because we have got 10. I went into the last week of the season 8 and 5, and if I'd lost, I would have missed the playoffs. I won, so I made it in.
Oh my goodness!
But the 4th and 5th teams were 9 and 5. The 6th place team was 8 and 6. So I see how those things happen, because I nearly, I had some stuff like that happen in some of my leagues, and then that team again that had the most out of 300 different teams nearly missed the playoffs.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
I would have been so mad.
Yeah, I feel bad. I had one league where our best team was 8 and 6, and everybody between 1st and 9th was either 8 and 6 or 7 and 7. Absolutely everybody. And it came down straight up to point differential. And I'm really mad because, there's always like that one game. And I'm like, if I'd won that one game this year, I would be in 2nd and not 7th right now. And then I went to the bottom of the standings, and there's one guy sitting at 1 and 13. So it's like everybody just got free wins from him, and then just on a cycle beat everybody else. And it really kind of shows like you can't throw weeks in fantasy, because you have a bad week or something. It's like, I started tight end with 0 points or whatever. I got blown out. I had 60. The other guy had 130. Nothing I could have done. That really could affect you end of the season, because that determines whether you finish 2nd or 5th, especially this year.
It does. Yeah. The public league that Judah and I were in together, I think I mentioned it on one podcast, how just a ton of teams were bunched up at 7 and 7. And that's how it finished. Teams 3 through 8 finished 7 and 7. And so Judah got into the playoffs ahead of me, because he had like 32 more points than me. But, it was all just on point differential. And it's just a $20 league. But then I showed you that other one too, where that guy had to beat me by like, I don't remember, 25 or something, because then he could tie me and beat me in points. And he beat me by 23 point something. And so for the season, I got into the playoffs as the 4th seed over him by like 1.8 something points.
Oh no.
Out of nearly 1,700 points for each of us.
And we wonder why he didn't show up today.
Oh no, not Judah. That one wasn't. This was a different guy in a different league.
That's brutal.
But yeah. I mean, it's so, the differentials are so, and anytime I lose a really close game, I hate it, because I know that a lot of times your record, at least for me, sometimes those games that are decided by 1 point or less are going to be what determines whether I get into the playoffs or not. It's going to determine whether I'm 9-5 or 8-6. And I had that this year with multiple leagues, because I lost a lot of close games. And I can't complain too much, because in the past, most of those have gone my way, and it's like they all saved up for this season. It's like all those times where I should have, maybe lost or something. It's like they all, just packaged together and waited for this year. And then it was just an avalanche of them at one time.
Ugh. Well, fortunately, MathQuest made the right decision in his $100 league. He started Jacobs and Herbert, and he's got the impending boom from Mr. Derrick Henry in his starting lineup. Right. We've seen Judah go through this before, but still, that's a really good start. You're sitting at almost 50 points. We just straight right off the bat. Should he flex Wayne Gallman or T.Y. Hilton, hoping to continue his incredible streak of games? I think I go T.Y. He's been playing great. He gets a great matchup. Rivers is throwing well. And Gallman's been great. And we've talked about this before. Jared's the one who brought him up first. He's really tapered off in recent weeks. I think I go T.Y.
Same. Yeah. It's now starting to look like another week of Colt McCoy in New York. And
that means Alfred Morris is going to get 4 touchdowns this week.
Yeah. I don't understand the connection there, but it's almost like a pitcher in baseball, and they have their favorite catcher, and sometimes and it's not the regular catcher or something. So maybe that's it. It's Colt McCoy has his own like designated running back that he likes to hand off to. Yeah, for that reason, and yeah, I mean the Colts seem to have figured some things out in terms of that passing game. T.Y. Hilton, even prior to T.Y.'s first blow up against the Texans a couple of weeks ago, I said, T.Y. has historically been a Texan killer. And so he found that magic again, and he's kept it going. So I like him. Gallman's been a great plug-in for me in a couple of leagues, multiple leagues really this year. But it feels like that magic feels like that carriage is starting to turn back into a pumpkin a little bit. Yeah. So I would go T.Y.
Yeah, I think he hasn't been bad, to be fair, for Gallman, right. But I think the clock's starting to strike midnight. He's got Cleveland and Baltimore next 2 weeks. Don't want to have to mess with either of those. T.Y. Hilton's been playing well. He's literally the wide receiver equivalent of Derrick Henry against the Jaguars when it comes to Houston. So, yeah, I'm with you on this one. T.Y. Hilton. Todd Eldred's got another story time for us. Start of the year, pivoted like a champ as he drafted Michael Thomas, Gurley, Judy, and Keenan Allen. Thomas goes down week 1. He gets offered DJ Moore, and he bundles in Gurley to get Carson tossed in. Then he turns and packages Carson Allen with the prospect of Tyrod Taylor throwing to him and Judy for Derrick Henry before the deadline, and he gets a straight-up trade of Zeke for Allaire. Zeke is an RB2, not bad. You're the wheeler and dealer, Jared, not me. That ain't some bad. That's a lot of. It's like a long trade list to follow down. My goodness.
That is. I like those trades, though. I mean, this is sort of the opposite. This is more along my mentality and sort of the opposite of Judah's mentality of trades. which I still will never in life understand. Like if I could find out one question in the universe, it would not be what's the meaning of life. It would be, why does Judah make the trades that he does? That would be the one question that I would ask the cosmos. What's the meaning of life would be second.
Right, of course.
So I like the Derrick Henry trade. Obviously, there's not much you could have probably told me that you gave up for Derrick Henry that I would have been like, oh, that was giving up too much. Maybe if it involved Travis Kelce and Dalvin Cook or something like that. But no, Henry's great. I don't like the Zeke trade. If you got Zeke on that, I think he's just impossible to trust right now. I mean, we got a good game from him in Minnesota. He was okay against Baltimore, 11 points. Cincinnati, he did nothing. Of course, in between against Washington, he did nothing. And then prior to that, really, there hadn't been anything that he had done. He hadn't hit double digits for a streak of a month or more after Dak left. So, Edwards-Helaire is unpredictable too. But last game he was in double digits. He had really a string of about 3 out of 4 in double figures. He's not been maybe as bad as we think of CEH having been. It seems like he's a disappointment in some ways because he became a first round pick and he's in that Kansas City offense. Yeah. But he had 2 games of basically 4.5 points. One of those was against Tampa, which is a tough run defense, and one's against the Jets, which is actually sometimes surprisingly tough against the run. Yeah. Basically every other game, he's been in double figures. Week 5 against the Raiders, it was 9.5, so that's close. But he's been in double figures. So I would have actually hung on to CEH on that one.
I will defer to Jared's trade knowledge. He is a much better wheeler and dealer than I am. Monir N, thanks for tuning in. Good to have you with us. Pick a flex, full PPR, Godwin, Gallman, Kenyon Drake, or T.Y. Hilton. What do you think on the? I'll let you take this one first, Jared. What do you think here?
Well, Gallman, we've already talked about a little bit. He's, I think, the easy one to kind of throw out. EY has been back on his game lately, and he's the Texans killer. Still worries me a little bit that he could kind of revert back. But at the same time, we talked about Godwin too, where he has not been terribly reliable over the last couple of games because it's been kind of boom or bust. In a way, I feel like Drake is one of the safer plays in that, even though the matchup is not great against Philly. Drake is pretty reliably in double figures. Yeah. He's even had some, the Rams game, he still came out with 12.8 points, thanks to a touchdown. You've really got some good options there with those other 3. I think I would go. I think I would maybe go Drake for the floor, but that's really tough. Because I think you've got if you need upside, I would go with Godwin or Hilton. And in trying to order them, I would say maybe Hilton, then Godwin, because Hilton's going to be more of the the number one there in Indy. But again, Drake for the floor because I think he's going to get the carries. Looks like Chase Edmonds is going to play.
Okay.
Because I guess he was questionable. Let's see what the latest is. He's still got the questionable tag, but he did get in limited practice. That's the other thing. Like if Chase Edmonds is out, I think you got to go Drake. Because if he's getting that full workload, I think you got to go him regardless if Chase Edmonds is out. If Edmonds plays and you're needing a guy that could, have upside, then I'd go maybe Hilton or Godwin.
Yeah, I think I would go Hilton out of the two just because, like you said, he's the Texans killer, getting great targets in recent weeks. I'm not sure what happened to Tampa's passing offense last week, even though they get Atlanta this week. Gallman, like we said, we're having a rough time. I think if you're 55, 57, 58, 60% chance to win, and as much as I know Yahoo's or ESPN's rankings are a little bit whack, Kenyon's definitely your safest play. And then I think T.Y. is the best boomer bust choice for me. I think.
A little bit of news here is Damian Harris is out this week.
Oh, okay.
So,
then.
Not sure what that means. Is that going to make it? Are we going to get a Sony Michel resurgence? Is it going to be James White? I'm not sure.
That is very curious. I have no idea what to do with that. I'm going to be honest. Todd Eldridge, the who's left guy, who literally had everybody on his team get injured, was third in scoring and missed the playoffs by 5 points because of a tied record. Oh, that's rough. That's brutal. Oh my goodness. This year has just been brutal in terms of making it to the playoffs. It has not been kind to a lot of 5th place people this year. Thomas H. Hey fellas, good to see you. Thomas H., a resident Falcons fan with an Atlanta with a Tampa Bay Buccaneers profile picture. Says, hey fellas, question from my son. Kenyon Drake, J.K. Dobbins, or Raheem Mostert at flex, half-point PPR. First instinct, Drake is safer. Dobbins is your boom bust play, I think. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, I think so. But I think if, like I said, like to the previous question, if Edmonds is out, I think I got to go Drake regardless. For that full workload. If Edmonds is in, then yeah, I think Dobbins with the Jags. That's a pretty nice matchup. You do just run the risk of, is Gus Edwards going to get every goal line carry? Right. What's going to happen there? But yeah, I think that would be the play for me.
Yeah, and as much as we always say, Dobbins has great matchups and he's been doing well with what he's got, he's still getting 12, 11, 13 carries. And you voiced your frustration on this about how you love watching Mark Ingram vulture carries from J.K. Dobbins as well. Dobbins just has not been getting the yards in great matchups even.
Yeah. I don't particularly love watching especially if I'm starting J.K. Dobbins. I don't particularly love seeing Mark Ingram run for 1.5 yards over and over. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to run an NFL team. I'm sure it's a lot of egos, and you got to keep guys happy by, giving them some carries. But that's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, I think I'll go with Jared on this one. Watch Edmonds, see what happens with him. I like Dobbins as a boomer bust play. There's still the chance that he pulls a Cam Akers type game and actually explodes for 170 touchdown or two. But that's going to be worrisome because you still got Lamar, you still got Gus, you still got Alex Collins, you still got Mark Ingram who could all vulture carries from him. Drake is the safer play. I think if you're 52, 58, chance to win, you go Drake. If you're in trouble, you go Dobbins. But I think I agree with Jared. If Chase Edmonds is definitely going to be out, I would just fire up Drake. All systems go. I like Mostert's matchup against Dallas, but Jeff Wilson Jr. is vulturing carries from him, and I do not trust that San Francisco backfield at all. So, yeah, I think Drake's probably number one. If Edmonds is playing, I'd go Dobbins. Nathan K says, hi, guys. Hey, Nathan. Good to have you with us. Jalen Hurts or Ryan Tannehill in standard. He's worried Derrick Henry's going to go off against the Lions and the game will be over quick or it'll be very low scoring. Hurts put up a great game last time, but he's going up against Arizona. I know you're a Tannehill guy, Jared. What do you think?
Yeah, I got to go with Ryan Tannehill. I like Hurts for Week 16 against the Cowboys. But yeah, for this week, I mean, it is a risk. It is a risk that Derrick Henry can just demolish them. Tannehill last week didn't, have a bad game. I mean, he had, 16 and a half points. It wasn't like he played poorly. It's just that Derrick Henry ran all over the Jaguars. But Tannehill, basically if you take his games at home against subpar defenses, he's done very well. Cleveland, 28.5 points. Houston, 29.5. Buffalo, 30. Jacksonville at home, 26.7. So I think there's, there seems to be a little bit going on there, with the home road split with Tannehill this year. Let's see, he's at home. He has now he's played one more game at home than on the road, but at home he's thrown for 19 touchdowns, 2 INTs. Away he's thrown for 9 touchdowns, 3 INTs. So I like him at home a little bit better. That basically that was the same thing as 2019, where 14 touchdowns, 2 INTs at home, 8 touchdowns, 4 INTs away. There's just some guys that, even without fans in other buildings to scream and distract, they somehow just play better at home. And Tannehill seems to be one of those guys. So I still feel good about him for this week. I think it's an easier matchup. But you also have the possibility that Derrick Henry does a lot of the running down inside the red zone, and then maybe Tannehill throws touchdowns or runs the ball in. True. So I think when it's a good matchup, it's hard to predict that, like, oh, well, it's going to be all this guy and none for the quarterback. So I still really like Tannehill for this week. But Jalen Hurts next week against the Cowboys is looking pretty tempting.
Yeah, I think I'm in complete agreement. Tannehill has had, in my opinion, 3 bad games this year. Number 1 was week 3 against Minnesota. So, that at this point is like a lifetime ago. He had a bad game against Chicago, only 14 points. That's a tough pass defense. And then he had a very bad game against a tough Colts defense on Thursday night. And I've said multiple times, I hate starting people on Thursday night games. I mean, Herbert and Jacobs, fortunately, were exceptions this week, but for a lot of teams, they have a rough time on Thursday. And yeah, Henry did kind of take over the Jacksonville game, but he still had the safe floor of 16. And I mean, that's mediocre, but I mean, you'll take it, especially when people like Cam Newton can drop 5 for you like he did last week. So I would go Tannehill, safe matchup. I think he's a safe play. He's never scored under 10 points. He hasn't scored under 16 over the last 4 weeks. And Jalen Hurts, he's very good. But Arizona's got a very good defense, and they're hungry for a playoff spot, so they're looking to bounce back as well. I like Hurts, like Jared said, next week. I think he's going to go off in Dallas, but I do not want to give up that safe floor of Ryan Tannehill this week. And speaking of Tannehill, Fende, hope I'm pronouncing that right. Love the Toronto Raptors jersey in the profile picture. Asks, Kyler Murray or Ryan Tannehill? And I know you also are a Murray guy, Jared, but what do you think about his matchup this week? They're going up against Philadelphia.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Kyler has kind of dropped off the last several games. Last several games, his high was 20.26 in Seattle. Yep. Didn't have a good game in New England, although New England's tough on a lot of quarterbacks. Had 17 against the Rams, which Rams are tough on quarterbacks, and then 18 against the Giants. The Giants have also been pretty tough on quarterbacks. So it's interesting because Philadelphia has technically given up the 12th fewest fantasy points to Cleveland or to quarterbacks. And you've got a guy who's on a downtrend. But I don't know. I don't know if this is just me being optimistic because there are leagues where I have to start Kyler for the playoffs. There's not a better option for me really. But, I think maybe, Philadelphia has benefited from that NFC East. You look at the teams they've faced. Washington, LA Rams, Cincy, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Giants, Dallas post Dak, Giants, Browns, Seahawks, and this is the Seahawks in the middle of the Russell Wilson slide, and then at Green Bay and New Orleans. Well, what did Aaron Rodgers do to them? So that's a recent comp. Aaron Rodgers, put up. Well, actually, that's the wrong Aaron. Aaron Rodgers put up 23.5 against him. Nice. He had 295 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that's no slouch of a game there. It's tough. I'm sort of inclined to go Kyler, but those are both good options.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where we talk about, do you need boom or bust, or are you looking like winning? If you're getting that 54, 58, 60%, I'd go Tannehill, take the safe floor. If you're down, Kyler Murray, I think definitely has a bigger chance of absolutely blowing up this week. And Todd Eldred says, Nate, he brings up the Titans defense hasn't been strong, and Stafford somehow is trending towards playing. They should keep it up at least for a little bit, and it's hard to trust anything that Philadelphia does. Very true. I think I'm with you. Probably if it's like a 50-50 matchup, I think I'd go Kyler for the upside. But if you got a hot start from Josh Jacobs and you're projected to win, I think I might take that safe floor with Ryan Tannehill. Kevin L. coming in asked the question, y'all think Ayuk will have a good game this week? I think he could have a great game this week.
And maybe
back line.
Maybe that's not a typo. Maybe he really does want to know if Ayuk can have a God game this week.
Right, exactly.
And it could be a God game against the Cowboys. Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. He's been good in Debo's absence, and going up against the Dallas defense, he should be able to have a great game, I think. Yep. I'm with both of y'all on this one. Lucius Vaughnus, 44 Varinas. I hope I pronounced that right. Pick one wide receiver. T.Y. Hilton. If you had told me we were getting a lot of T.Y. questions in week 15 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yep. T.Y. Hilton, Chris Godwin, or Thielen. Can't flex. Thanks in advance. What do you think, Jared? We've talked a lot about Hilton's great matchup and how he always tears up the Texans. And as someone who has Adam Thielen in multiple leagues, he has been a frustration to deal with at times.
Yeah, it's tough because he's got the Bears this week, and he had a surprisingly good game against them the first time, but it's sort of skewed by the fact that he had 2 touchdowns. I mean, he had four catches for 43 yards against them. He was fortunate to have those 2 touchdowns. That's another really tough one. I think I'm going to gamble on TY maybe in that one. I don't like doing that. I don't really want to go with him over, Thielen, especially Godwin. I think there's limited upside in that Bucs offense because even with a great matchup, there's a lot of receivers to feed. So you look at Godwin's stat line for the season, and he's been at or above 15 points once. So I think he's pretty limited. So he's, I think, probably the third option for me out of those 3. But TY against the Texans, I think that's a little bit too hard to pass up. If it was almost any other matchup for Thielen, I would probably go Thielen. He's normally just very safe, but you're really relying on him to, I think, get a touchdown in order to give you a good fantasy day, and you can't always predict those.
Yeah, man, I think I'm going Hilton. Godwin, like we said, he should be fine. But after that last game, I don't know what to tell with Chris Godwin. And Thielen, the last time he played against Chicago, this was when Chicago could not get the ball past the 50-yard line. And I'm not just saying this because because the Bears are my favorite team. I mean this genuinely because the Bears have been a pain to watch for 7 straight weeks. And now all of a sudden, David Montgomery is running the football efficiently. He's running it well. Mitchell Trubisky's actually throwing it far better than Foles had been throwing it in the past weeks. I think the Chicago offense is not going to be going off the field every 2 minutes, which I think part of the reason why the Vikings were able to win is because they were able to wear the Bears defense down. The Bears offense couldn't stay out on the field for more than 6 plays, and so Minnesota just kept getting chances over and over and over again, and the game still ended like 19-13, and we, of course, gave the win to Kirk Cousins' first win on Monday Night Football, so that was great. But I think the Bears are going to actually take this one this week, and I'm not very confident in Vikings offense against the Bears defense. I don't really trust it that much. I would go T.Y. Hilton. on this one. Just great matchup, getting targets. Can't pass that down. Heisenberger, 2112 or 2112 or 2112. It's been a minute since we've seen you. Good to have you with us again. Cam Akers, Chris Carson, or Cooper Kupp, pick 2 PPR. He already started Waller this week, and his opponent played Allen. He's going for the championship this week. Jared, nice. What do you think? Pick 2 PPR to carry him to that fantasy football gold trophy.
I think I'm going to go with the Rams. I think I'm going to go with the Rams on this one. Kupp has been pretty consistent this season. They've kind of gotten back to. It's still interesting because there'll be games where he only has five targets.
Yeah.
So there's still a little bit of a risk there. He's not the target monster that he once was, but he's still getting some of those. If it was a better matchup for Chris Carson, I would probably lean a little bit more his way because I just a lot of times feel better about running backs and the volume that they're going to get. But Washington's not a slouch matchup. Ron Rivera's done a lot with that defense.
Yeah.
Of course, he also did have the benefit of Chase Young coming in this year. So I'm gonna go with the Rams on this one.
Yeah, Kupp has excuse me. Kupp has worried me a little bit. Oh, and he already has Tyreek, Aaron Jones, and no diggity, no doubt starting. So yeah, I think all of those are absolute startums this week, right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So Kupp has been kind of iffy in recent weeks for me. He's not getting a ton of targets. He's kind of touchdown dependent. And it's kind of really been frustrating. Carson, on the other hand, has come back from injury. He's been getting consistent carries. I think Seattle definitely needs the run game to actually get going and stabilize the offense, but he's still only getting like 12 carries a game. If Seattle gets it down to the goal line, I think I like Carson. I think Akers is absolutely the one I go with. And being that it's PPR, even Carson's been getting catches out of the backfield recently as well. I'm going to be honest. I might go Carson. I think he's a little bit safer than Cooper Kupp, and maybe this is just PTSD from watching Kupp get 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. Sure. I think I might be leaning Carson slightly. Oh, wait. They're playing the Jets.
They're playing the Jets, and the other thing I'm thinking about here is you're sort of hedging your bet a little bit if you start Akers and Kupp. Like if you've already got those other guys, if you've already had a big game from was it him that he said that he got a big game from Waller? Yeah. So he's already off to a good start.
That's true.
I would be inclined to hedge my bet a little bit. Say they don't really run it as much. Say it's a lot of peppering Kupp and Robert Woods. Then you're sort of hedging your bets. That'd be another reason I would do it.
Yep, you've convinced me. All right, Akers and Kupp. Okay. You've convinced me on that one. And really quick, Finda said he had a 52% chance of winning when it came to the Kyler Tannehill. I think you still going Kyler on this one?
Yeah, the winning percentage honestly doesn't mean anything for me of what Yahoo projects it out to be. I find myself disagreeing with that a lot. There's games where I'll be projected to win, and I look at that other guy's lineup, and I'm like, no, he's going to beat me. So I don't think there's. I don't put a lot of stock in that until it gets down to sort of like if you've got a guys going on Sunday night or Monday night, and it's, one guy for each team or two guys for one team and one for another, then you can kind of see what percentage or what number of points you're up by, like what the situation is in the game. And then you can start estimating that a little bit better of like what your actual chances of winning are. I don't put any real stock in the Yahoo percentages before games even start. So.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. Thomas H says, well, since Judah Buddha isn't here, want to look at our matchup to see if I should do anything different, anything else to beat him. And they're playing in the RotoHackers Listener League consolation sixth place game, but it's much more than that. You beat him, that means you get bragging rights over Judah for the next 8 months. So I'm looking at his lineup, and he's starting Jefferson, McLaurin, and Lockett and Deontay. And his running backs are Swift and McKissick over Ty Johnson, Singletary, Zach Moss, and Le'Veon. I don't think I changed anything there.
Let's see here.
And especially while you're looking at that with Michael Thomas out, I think that just makes it easier for you, because then it would have been a question of him or Deontay with Drew Brees back. But if Thomas is out, I think your lineup's good.
Yeah. No changes, I don't think, for me. The only possibility might be I'm still not sure what's happening with Antonio Gibson in Washington.
True.
But even then, even if he does play, is he going to be at 100%? Is he going to have a full workload? Would it, you're probably not going to be any safer, pivoting today to Devin Singletary. You'd have to make that decision today if you wanted to go with Singletary or Moss. That's the only kind of iffy one for me, but I think you've just got to roll with it and hope that either Gibson doesn't play or that, McKissick still gets a reasonable workload.
Yep, I think you should be good there. And before I get to MathQuest statement right there, Todd,
I don't know if we can even put it. I don't know if we should even put it up on screen, or if we should just like talk generally about what what he's asking. Because I mean, it only came out like I don't know how fast people watch the
right. Exactly. Yeah. Todd Eldridge, David Montgomery's last 3 games: 100 yards against Green Bay, 74 yards and 2 touchdowns against Detroit, and 130 and a TD against Houston. Derrick Henry's next 3 games are Detroit, Green Bay, and Houston. I didn't notice that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's not bad. I actually have a league where I have Montgomery and Henry.
Wow.
That they're my 2 starting running backs. So I'm hoping, Derrick Henry's going to follow in his footsteps, and then Montgomery, he still has Minnesota and Jacksonville.
Yep. Then he finishes with Green Bay if you play week 17.
Right. So, yeah, it would be nice to get a couple more stud weeks out of those 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, the more I watch David Montgomery, the more I think he's like a mini Derrick Henry. How often they both go to the stiff arm for like their first move. Both of them, one guy on, and the first thing they both go to is the stiff arm.
Yeah.
That looks like all of the fantasy questions we have for right now. So, Jared, do we want to give people a spoiler warning really quick?
Sure. Yeah. So MathQuest, if you haven't read his question, it's about the Mandalorian, and he wants to ask us something specifically about that. So if you have not watched the Mandalorian, leave now and go watch it.
Hold your peace.
Yeah, although it's very hard. It's very hard to avoid the Mandalorian spoilers are the hardest, I think, of any TV show I've ever seen to try to avoid, because people just immediately, the thing drops at midnight Pacific. So exactly. I don't have an opportunity usually to watch it on, Thursday night. And then by Friday morning, the spoilers are all over Twitter, especially.
Yeah.
So it's really frustrating trying to avoid spoilers for The Mandalorian. So if you haven't already been spoiled by social media, that's impressive. But just in case you haven't and you are intending to see it again, leave now because we're going to talk about a big spoiler.
Yep. And right before you do, we have a question from the Gambler Standard. Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers? Will the weather in Green Bay affect Rodgers' passing game? Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in, man. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, the way Aaron Rodgers has played this year, it's kind of tough to go away from him. I haven't seen what the weather is, actually. I mean, just by his little, name, it doesn't seem to have the little, weather icon of something going on. Is it just cold? Is it windy? Is it snowy? It's not really showing me, I guess, right now.
Tonight, it looks like it's just going to be really humid and freezing cold, which to me, that's just par for the course for Green Bay. If Rodgers had been affected by it, I feel like he would have been affected by it for years for now. I think he'll be fine in terms of weather.
Yeah. I think Lamar's going to do well. I would almost be a little bit inclined to go with Lamar because Lamar's beaten up on bad teams. Well, Cleveland's not a bad team. They were in a close game there. But if you go back to like the start of the season where some of those bad teams he played, he had some games in the teens. I would, I guess, go with Rodgers. It's really tempting against Jacksonville to want to go with Lamar, the way Lamar's played over the last 2 games. But one of those was a competitive game against Cleveland, which kind of forced him to keep going. I would still go with Rodgers. I really like the matchup with Lamar, though. Again, two good options to go with there. But I would probably go with Rodgers for the floor. If you're looking for a ceiling, you could make an argument for Lamar, but I guess I would ultimately still go with Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another one where if your opponent jumped out to a big lead like Jared did over me this week and started Herbert and Jacobs, I think you go Lamar because I think he has a much better chance of getting 30 points against Jacksonville because that's just what he does. He could throw it to Andrews. He can run it in himself. He's got a better boomer. He can boom really, really well. But if you started Jacobs, if your opponent kept Keenan Allen or like me had Nelson Aguilar in there, unfortunately, I think you go Rodgers. He's been eerily good this year. It's been frightening. He has never scored under 18 points with the exception of the game where Tampa Bay just completely outplayed Green Bay. With the exception of that game, Rodgers has never scored under 18 points. So Rodgers is absolutely the safer play here. It's hard for me to go against Aaron unless you need a big blow-up game. Then I would go Lamar because also I don't know what they're doing with Aaron Jones as well if he's going to run the football. But yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is the safer play for sure here. If you're down by 20 already, I would go Lamar. Well, that appears to be all the stuff we have for now. And every time I say that, we get another question. So let's see what happens next. But we are going to talk about The Mandalorian for a little bit because we're out of questions. We're excited. We just saw it. So the spoiler we're about to say, you have 5 seconds to leave.
Because it's the spoiler of not just 2020. I don't know. It's the big spoiler of like recent years.
Yeah, basically. All right, here we go. So MathQuest asked, what was your reaction to Mark Hamill's cameo as Luke Skywalker in the last episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian? For him, easily the most positively surprising moment of 2020. And Thomas H. affirms that, saying it's a fun way to end the season. The Mandalorian has definitely been one of the highlights of 2020. We talked about this a little bit before the episode, and I know I can see Jared's face already, a smile slowly growing across his face.
Yeah. Is that my cue? Is that
Yep, that's your cue. Go ahead.
Okay, so this I don't want the full screen for this, but this will be similar to my little rant that well, of course, now my dog's gonna start to bark.
Yeah, he may want in on the conversation as well.
Yeah, he may want. He's basically a Star Wars character. You know, I mean, he looks like I'm basically Mando. And Kylo, and he's named after a Star Wars character too.
Exactly.
And Kylo is a much more aggressive baby Yoda. So anyway, so yeah, for me, I am not like a hardcore Star Wars fan. Like I know people that are like, you know, this is their by far, like this is the thing for them. This is the IP, the intellectual property for them. This is the series. I think Star Wars is the coolest sandbox to play in. Like I think Star Wars has the coolest universe. I mean, you've got all these different planets, you've got all these crazy creatures, droids, aliens, you've got laser swords, basically, you know, lightsabers, you've got blasters, all this different stuff, bounty hunters. It's so good. Like there's so much potential there. But for me, Star Wars has always been more about like the potential than what they really delivered, I think. And so I've always wanted to get content sort of in like ongoing, you know, TV show form that could do more than just focus on this one family in the Star Wars universe of the Skywalkers. And so like a lot of my favorite memories of Star Wars come from this little MMORPG game, Star Wars Galaxies, which goes all the way back. That's like that like almost or maybe predates you, AJ. Because it was like 2003, 2004, this thing came out. You could build your own character and basically just run around this little world, you know, having adventures. And so, to get the Mandalorian has been a lot of fun. The other thing to it though is I hated the sequels. So I didn't hate. I'm already blanking on the name of the first Force Awakens. I didn't hate the Force Awakens. I was just okay on it. I'm like, okay, it's basically just a retread of A New Hope, but I understand that you got to make money with this movie and you need to like, you know, get the old fans back and introduce a new generation, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. That's fine. We'll see where it goes from here. And then I absolutely hated The Last Jedi. I hated The Last Jedi more than anything except the last season of Game of Thrones. And they had the same problem of basically like, we're going to subvert your expectations. Hated every bit of it. And so nowadays there's a lot of, you know, talk about like toxic fans, and there's some truth to that. I mean, if people are harassing an actor on Twitter to the point where they quit Twitter, then that is, or if they're harassing them, period, then that is toxic fandom. But that term is also sort of being used as a shield for bad movie making, you know, of like, oh, it's just toxic fans. No, it's fans that actually care about characters. I mean, again, like I've watched reaction videos on the internet of like people seeing Luke Skywalker and crying, you know, I mean, just crying because that character means so much to them. It's not that for me. It doesn't mean that to that level. But regardless of any story, I want the same thing that you know, that those hardcore fans want. I want you to treat the characters with respect. And to me, the sequel trilogy was basically just like directors who had no real connection to these characters in this universe just being like, oh, I want to come in and do something, you know, different with it. And it just doesn't land. People want you to treat their characters with respect. And so it lost me. The Last Jedi lost me from that moment that Luke throws the lightsaber over his shoulder, as that was played as a gag. I'm like, oh no, this is going to be so bad. No. And so I just hated him. And what I've been wanting as we've seen this season of The Mandalorian go along, and I know this is a very long roundabout answer to your question here, Math Quest, but sorry, I need to get this off my chest in public form. AJ's already had to hear most of this once already, so it's a retread for him. But you know, what I've wanted from the Mandalorian once I started to see how this season was going is like, oh, okay, they're really starting to give fans what they want. They're trying to make up for how much people hated the sequel trilogy. So when we saw Ahsoka in the midseason, I think roughly is around midseason, episode 5 or something like that.
5, yeah.
Maybe it's 4. And I'm like, oh wow, this is really cool. And I didn't have any real connection to that character either. I hadn't watched Clone Wars. I've since gone back and watched some. But I'm like, oh, they're going to do some things with this show. This is not just going to be like the one-off adventures of, Mando and Baby Yoda just helping random side characters. They're really starting to bring in some characters here. Mm-hmm. So then when Grogu had his little force call, I'm like, okay, they're going to have to pay that off by the end of the season. And they've already introduced Ahsoka. So I think we're going to get either Luke Skywalker or possibly the only other one that could really be bigger than Ahsoka for the finale would be, if you said, oh, Mace Windu's alive. Right. And like I told AJ, they already did this character's still alive with Boba Fett earlier. So they can't really retread that. So I felt like we're going to get Luke Skywalker in the finale in some form, something small. I did not expect that we were going to get what we got. But as soon as like that little radar started going off and that X-Wing came in, I'm like, oh my goodness. They're doing this. They're doing this. So I was like 70% sure, 70% sure, like, okay, this is Luke. They're going to give us Luke Skywalker. And then especially when Cara Dune's like, one X-Wing, I'm like, okay, 85% sure this is Luke Skywalker. And then the hooded figure comes in, and then you're at like 95 until they show the green lightsaber, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really what it is. So I loved it. I love what they're doing with this. The CGI was a little bit off. It's not perfect. It's a TV show. I would have still probably preferred that they just recast with Sebastian Stan. I get why they didn't. There would have been backlash against that. But my hope is like, I just want them to retcon the future movies somehow and just say like, okay, basically give this like the Star Wars treatment of where,
Star Trek treatment.
Star Trek. Yeah. Where Spock, ended up back in time and it creates an alternate timeline. And AJ and I, talked because I needed him. He's more of a, he's watched Clone Wars. He's watched Rebels. I've only seen little bits and pieces of it. So I needed him to confirm for me. I'm like, now, wait a minute. Didn't during Rebels, this one Jedi pull Ahsoka out of time? Yep. And I'm not sure, did they imply that saved her life as if she would have died, or did they really address that?
Kind of. So she was fighting Darth Vader and the entire building was collapsing around them, and he yanked her out probably to save her life, which to me, I think, okay, but then how did Darth Vader survive? Well, because he's Darth Vader. But yeah, it was basically to save her life from being absolutely destroyed by Vader in the building. Yeah.
And so they, so they played around with that a little bit, and then he wanted to save another character, but ultimately chose not.
His master.
Right, but chose not to do that because it would have affected the future. So they're kind of playing fast and loose with that a little bit of like, what can we do that will or won't affect what we've gotten to at this point? But I would love to see them do something like that for, the prequel or for the, sequels ahead. Is basically they find that little whatever that building was or whatever that place was that they were in before, where like, maybe a character gets pulled out of the future and then they're like, oh, hey, look, Kylo Ren's going to turn evil. So while Baby Yoda's at the Jedi Academy, he's going to need to toughen him up. He's going to have to bully Kylo Ren and, give him swirlies in the bathroom whatever. He's going to have to toughen him up somehow so that he doesn't turn to the dark side. That's probably not the best way to do it, but it's the most, that's the most amusing way in my mind is Grogu giving Kylo Ren like force swirlies. So that's really what I want now. I'm really getting greedy now as we talk about all this, but no, I loved it. Trying to think if there was anything else within 2020 that really kind of compared to that moment in terms of entertainment. But I mean, that was so cool because I didn't expect to get that much. I thought we were just going to get something small, and we got the thing that like Luke Skywalker fanboys have really always wanted, is just to get to see like a fully powered Luke wrecking stuff, which you didn't really get in Return of the Jedi. He, you got like little snippets of it, but when it came down to the fight at the end, he was basically relying on turning his father back to the light side, and not really like just, winning by a show of strength or whatever. And then in the sequels, I mean, it was just basically character assassination for Luke Skywalker. So this is the thing that fans already wanted. As much as I enjoy it, I enjoy it more for, I think, the people that I know, like, oh, Luke Skywalker is just their thing, kind of like how, we've talked about like, the Black Panther series, and, I love those movies. But at the same time, for me, I know it doesn't mean the same thing for me that it means for other people. And so as much as I enjoy it, part of what makes it enjoyable for me is knowing how much it means, to other people. And so it's in a different sort of way, a similar thing here with Luke Skywalker. So I loved it. It makes me excited about the possibility of the future of the Star Wars series. And I hope they just go all the way with it. Make this just its own universe where they're like, okay, this does not feed into that future timeline. We can do whatever we want with it, and just go all the way with it.
Yeah, the Favreau dimension, exactly.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know, the Star Wars, the SWFCU or something. Or no, I guess it's Favreau and Filoni. So
right, exactly.
Like SWFFCU. It's not, that's not really any worse than like title. It's not really any worse than like the DCEU, blah blah blah, whatever. It's fine.
Sony universe of Marvel characters.
So for you, as not an old man, how did this land for you?
Yeah. Before I say that, we actually do have a couple other comments real quick that are actually about fantasy. So
get out of here with your fantasy questions.
It's not like we're running a fantasy football show or anything. Robert Jaramillo or Mio, I'm not sure. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I started Keenan Allen and got Wallered on top of that. Deshaun Watson, Jalen Hurts, and in the flex, Jeff Wilson, Scary Terry, Gus Edwards, or Rashard Higgins. The flex is easy for me, Scary Terry, McLaurin, and I think I got to go with Deshaun and his ceiling, I think, this week, honestly. What do you think?
Yeah, same for me. McLaurin on that one all day. Deshaun, it's tough because it's Indy. Indy's a pretty tough pass defense. He's missing Will Fuller. I haven't seen the latest on what Cooks is. If he's, I guess he's got no tag at this point. So Cooks should be back for them. If you're really looking for a ceiling, though, I don't know. I don't know if there are any other options out there. I would probably go Hurts if those are my two choices, just because even though I don't think Hurts is going to have a blow up game, I think Deshaun is even more limited in some ways. Yeah, I don't know if there are any other options out there for you on the waiver wire. I mean, I'm sure in terms of quarterbacks, it's pretty limited. Yeah. I would lean Hurts because I don't think that he's going to really blow up, but I think Deshaun facing that defense is more limited. Some teams have had good games in Arizona this season. I mean, Josh Allen put up nearly 29 there. Russell Wilson, had the big Tyler Lockett game, and actually, let's see. Maybe this was which way? I'm losing. Oh yeah. So Russell's game in Arizona was 33. So they've had some bigger games. Maybe Hurts, breaks a couple on the ground. It's
True.
it's kind of like the Miles Sanders thing. Like, I didn't love Miles Sanders against New Orleans, but I'm like, maybe he breaks a big one or two, So I think that would be my reasoning there. But I don't love either one of them to have a blow up game. But if you're just swinging for the fences, I would say Jalen.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. That's true. I'll defer to you with the quarterback one. That's really tough for me. But yeah, Scary Terry against Seattle. That's an easy one for me. Even with Haskins throwing, because Wilson's going to be splitting with Raheem, Edwards is splitting with 20 other people, and Higgins is splitting with Peoples, Jones, Landry, Chubb, and Hunt. So yeah, McLaurin's the easiest one for me there. Battle Royale 2K. Been a minute. Good to see you with us in the chat again. Hey guys, big slanting Chubb made it to top 4 after all of the post-draft criticism. There you go. just playing at a ton of fun this year. It should be a fun finish. That is true. And you got a nice, I think, 18 points from Josh Jacobs, if I'm correct. So it's going to be a close match this week for you. Pick one, half PPR, Zeke, Kiki QT, Jeff Wilson, or DJ Chark. I forgot the Jaguars had wide receivers. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was just going back to look at his team because I couldn't remember if I had how badly I had criticized him, or if I had, or who it had come from. Yeah, your team. I will say, I think your team has done. I'm now just trying to like go back after the fact and guess what I would have thought or said at the time. And yeah, I don't know that I would have. I don't think I would have predicted your team to be one of the top teams based on, those guys, Leonard Fournette, and obviously Leonard Fournette's not one that really worked out for you, but Chris Carson did. David Montgomery's come on here late in the season. Gibson was a great pick at $3. So yeah, you got it done. It's, goes to show that the post-draft analysis is not always going to be the, it doesn't dictate what your season is going to be. And so much of it is about in-season management. And that's something I always say too, is I think in this league, I was fortunate that I did have a good draft, and I've had a good core that I've just had to kind of put some pieces around. But in a lot of my leagues, it's more about the in-season management that I do. So
very true.
No, congrats to you. And maybe I'll, maybe it'll be me and you ended up in the finals. I can't look past AJ just yet. AJ could come back and get me, and you've got our RotoHackers nemesis, Jonathan Buster / Iderts when Eifert. So we'll see. We could end up in the consolation finals, or we could end up in the championship together. So
very true.
Okay,
and he does bring up it was Judah who gave all the criticism.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
More sense.
Okay, that does make more sense. I was like, I could have. I don't know that I would have been that hard on the team, but maybe the Fournette pick I would have been a little iffy on. But
and I will say he is an aggressive trader. We had maybe. I have I still get Yahoo email updates from someone sent you a trade or you didn't get this person or whatever, just because it's easier for me to go through and delete them. We went through maybe 30 back and forth trade offers through various weeks this year for Montgomery, Gurley, Gibson, Newton. It has been just back and forth. That is another thing. He's a very smart and very aggressive trader. Because I'm looking at your team and I'm like, he didn't draft everybody here. He's a very good trader. Getting Diggs, another big one. He is a very, very aggressive trader, very smart trader.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm going back to look to see what trades we had. I think the one and only trade I had with him was, I think he offered me, let's see if I can find this real quick. Yeah. So I had some trades, but most of the time they were with MathQuest or Scaraby Jiraffy, as I like to call him. So I had one trade with Slanting Chubb, and I think it made sense for both of us. Is he offered me Latavius Murray in exchange for Mecole Hardman, and it didn't really do, or it hasn't really done much of anything for us, but I think it made sense for him because Tyreek Hill at the time was iffy for a game, and and every game counts. Latavius Murray didn't really mean anything to him because unless Kamara gets hurt, then he's really not someone you can start. He's going to have like he had a 25-point game against Denver. He's going to have a blow up game every 8 games or so. But, really there was no benefit for him unless Kamara got hurt. So that was my one and only trade with him. And it hasn't really done much for either of us, but I think it made sense for both of us. So I think he's done a good job of trading, and that's part of what's helped his team. I have barely been able to make any trades this year. This has been the hardest year to trade outside of probably our listeners league. People just don't want to trade. I mean, I've offered good stuff that, would benefit other people. They're just like, no, not interested. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's hit his 2 questions real quick.
Yeah. This is a tough one. I don't particularly like Chark against anyone this season, especially against the Ravens. Anyone against the Cowboys is tempting. I would like to know more, though, what Wilson's role is going to be, because it looks like, I guess, Mostert's going to play. If Mostert hadn't played, then that would be an extremely nice matchup there for Wilson. Zeke, I don't love. He's probably going to get you 7 or 8 points. Kiki Cutie had a good game against Houston. Against Indy the first time around. I would be more inclined to go with him or Wilson. Cutie, though, he didn't really do a whole lot in that last game with Brandon Cooks out. Brandon Cooks will be back this week. I think for me, it's between those two, Cutie and Wilson. I guess if it looks like Wilson is going to have a clear number 2 role to Mostert, I would kind of follow that up until the game and see how that sounds. If maybe Wilson's going to get a little bit more because of Mostert having been a little bit banged up, I would probably go with him. If not, I would probably go with Cutie. I think, Zeke is just so hard to trust. He's been hurt. There's no guarantee that he's even going to play. True. He could get less. And even when he's been in there, post Dak, he just hasn't had a lot of good games. So that's my pick is Wilson. If it looks like maybe the talk is he's going to get a little bit more, otherwise maybe Cutie. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Cutie, honestly, I know he didn't have a great game last week, 3 catches, I think it was, but Zeke's inconsistent. I'm done with San Francisco running backs as a whole, and Chark and the Jaguars offense is just a mess. So I'll go Cutie. I'll say I would go Cutie out of those. Other question, also tight end, Eric Ebron or Irv Smith Jr., your guy, Jared.
Some big breaking news here before we get to that is Michael Thomas is actually going on IR. So not only is he missing this week, he is done for the rest of your fantasy season if you have him. And I don't know what that means for the Saints, if he'll come back for, the first round, which there's, a chance they're going to get a bye. So maybe he's back for the second round of the playoffs. They're just wanting to rest him till then. But for fantasy purposes, Michael Thomas is done.
Wow, Jared breaking the news here.
Well, technically I'm just sort of relaying it from Matthew Berry, but I think but we're basically the same person. I think one thing that this might kind of do for you a little bit with Brees back is maybe you want to go out and pick up Emmanuel Sanders. Maybe there's an option there, especially next week against New Orleans, or against Minnesota.
Yeah.
With Brees back under center, Thomas out, and a pretty good matchup. Regardless of whether or not you want to fire it up for this week, I think Sanders could maybe be an interesting plug-in for next week. So that's my little interruption there.
Yep. So Ebron or Irv Smith, what do you think?
I'm going to give the edge to Ebron. Like I said, I had a question last week about Hurst, Ertz, or Logan Thomas, and I said, hey, go pick up Irv Smith.
Called it.
I did call that one. I feel pretty good about that one. Yeah. So Irv Smith ended up with 14 and a half points. Hurst and Ertz were at 1 point something, and then Logan Thomas was, respectable at like 7 point something. I still like Irv Smith for this week. Actually, he and Ebron are like 3-4 in terms of their matchups. Like Ebron is facing the third worst, and Irv Smith is facing the fourth worst defenses against tight ends. So they're both good options, but I just trust Ebron to get a little bit more of the volume because the Steelers can't run the ball. So I would actually go with him there, although I think Irv is a pretty solid option too.
Yeah, I like Ebron's consistency with targets. I think that's the main thing with me. Roethlisberger loves throwing to him, and with the exception of last week, he had 11 targets in back-to-back games. I just like his safe consistency, and he's also targeting him in the end zone, and I don't know what Minnesota is going to do against Chicago this week, so I would also go with Eric Ebron. And Thomas H. brings up, congrats to Slanting Chubb and Ertzwin Eifert on a great season. And Battle Royale says thanks to Thomas H. and his boys at RotoHackers with the breaking news. We got all you can ask for. Yes, sir. You already know it. You already know it, man. It is really interesting that Judah ends up getting knocked down to the consolation game this week, and this is the week he doesn't show up, of course. So
it's interesting. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Let's see here. That appears to be all of the questions we have right now. Be sure, if you haven't already, I keep bringing this up, but join our Discord. We got a lot of great people. We'd love to see everybody there as well. We'd love to see everybody in the comments section. We'll have a lot of great discussion. And yeah, this year, the RotoHackers Listener League has been one of the craziest seasons I've ever been in. Jared, do you want to wrap up now, or do you want to go back to the Mandalorian for a second?
We didn't get to your, your take on it all. So yeah, I'd like to hear yours.
Yeah. So first question, do you mind if I spoil the end of Star Wars Rebels for you? Do you have any desire to watch that?
I actually went and watched it. So I'm
okay.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, the end of that show is the weirdest thing ever. Where it makes absolutely no sense to where Ezra calls in space whales to break a Star Destroyer, and he takes Grand Admiral Thrawn into hyperspace. So it makes no sense. So when Luke initially showed up, I was watching it. I was watching the finale. I watched that one with my family, and my brother was like, "Oh," because he's seen all of Rebels too, and he goes, "This is Ezra." They brought in Ahsoka. They mentioned Thrawn. The Darksaber's in it because the connections to Rebels are so frequent in this show. And he was like, "Oh, it's got to be Ezra." And then as I kept watching it, I was like, X-Wing, black glove on the hand, green lightsaber, simpler lightsaber form. I don't think it's Ezra, and it ended up being Luke. I was really excited for it. It's kind of sad knowing that this is the main, that this is like the end of Din Djarin's story, kind of, because the next one, I don't know, does Book of Boba Fett mean it's going to be solely focused on Boba Fett? Is Din Djarin going to be a recurring character? And I don't know. So it's kind of sad because I got a Mandalorian and the Child Funko Pop, and now they're not together, which is really sad to me. But I definitely enjoyed it. It's definitely been my favorite Star Wars IP since The Force Awakens over the last 5 years. Because I love Force Awakens. I love that one. I will always love that movie. I don't hate The Last Jedi. I have a weird love-hate relationship with it where I like some parts, then I absolutely hate some parts. And then Rise of Skywalker, I told you a story about how I got a deal on Target for the filmmaker's book, and that was the thing I was really buying it for.
Yeah.
And even after that, it was like, I mean, Clone Wars season 7, the last 4 episodes are great. The first 4 were good, and the middle 4 were horrible.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, Solo and Rogue One, they're not bad, but yeah, having The Mandalorian has really been like my favorite Star Wars thing, and actually have a finale that ends well, because I just finished The Legend of Korra, and they did not know how to end a season properly, and it was really annoying. So watching The Mandalorian and actually seeing like a good ending where things come full circle, but it's still open to the sense that, oh, we're still going to get the Rangers of New Republic show, we're getting an Ahsoka show, and we're going to get the Book of Boba Fett still coming up. So I very much enjoyed the ending. It was really great. And it's the worst part about it is that now we got to wait till December for the next season.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what they are going to do with, I mean, at first I'm like, because I had heard that the rumors about a Boba Fett spinoff, and then I'm like, well, why didn't they announce that? And so then when they had this at the end of The Mandalorian, I'm like, oh, they just wanted to have some sort of little, end credit scene and announce it there, and it's still going to be a spinoff. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Is this going to be like The Mandalorian has been told like as a book, like as in, every episode is a chapter,
right?
Since we kind of have a point of closure for the moment at that storyline, is this going to take over is Boba Fett essentially going to become the main character of The Mandalorian for next season?
Yeah.
And then, Din / Pedro Pascal, is he just going to be a recurring character? Is he going to pop up in some of the other series? I really don't know, but it sounds like maybe that's what it is, because they've already said that the next Mandalorian season is going to come out like Christmas 2021, and the Book of Boba Fett is going to come out Christmas 2021. Are they really going to drop 2 right at the same time? So it's sounding to me like this is going to be sort of, next season is maybe going to be Boba centric. You're going to see Mando pop up in this show, probably in some of the other shows. And then, maybe, a year from now or a season from now, it goes back to Mando reuniting with the child. There's some new storyline. I have mixed feelings about it, because I'm kind of like you. I mean, I want to see those two together, but at the same time, I do think we're at a point where it's like, what else can we really do right now? Because it's the storyline has been him protecting the child from the Empire, and you can only get so much mileage out of that. I think we do need sort of a little pause here, and then come back with a new storyline of, okay, the child has hit a growth spurt, and it's, it's sort of like, the different incarnations of baby Groot, or the different incarnations of Groot, where it's baby Groot and teenage Groot. And so, maybe, when we see him again, it's sort of, he's talking, he's got his force abilities, because as cute as Baby Yoda has been, like, people will lose their minds over, can you imagine if we get a little talking force abilities Joker with like a little teeny tiny lightsaber? I mean, people are going to go crazy over that. I don't think we've seen the last of them. I think they're going to be back together. I think we'll get a couple more seasons of them together, at least. But but it is kind of bittersweet, because I think we're going to have a pause in there, and maybe that's going to start becoming sort of the norm for shows as we enter the sort of, as we've been in sort of the reboot era. We've been in sort of the reboot era of stuff coming back, and I think shows are just kind of starting to plan for this. Like one show that I'm a huge fan of, maybe it's my favorite show now, is The Expanse on Amazon Prime. And it was on Sci-Fi for 3 seasons. Sci-Fi canceled it, and Amazon picked it up, because it's based on novels, and there's like 9 novels. Well, Amazon has sort of canceled it again, but the show runners are sort of calling it a pause, because they're like, in the books, after book 6, there's a huge time jump. And so it sounds like maybe it's going to be like, okay, we know how lucrative reboots can be. we're just going to go ahead and intentionally, like, stop this here, pause this here, and in 5 years or whatever, come back with finishing up those last 3 or whatever. So I'm wondering if maybe we're going to start to see that sort of thing intentionally done, of like, okay, yeah, we're going to give you 3 seasons and then we're going to pause for X number of years and come back, because it's jarring now, but it's sort of like how streaming was a little bit jarring, or how getting 8 to 10 episode seasons was like, wow, this is weird. So maybe this becomes sort of a norm for shows, is like not even like, okay, we're going to have this run for 6 or 7 years and then reboot it in 15. But like, we're now changing the model a little bit, and we're just going to do 3, pause, do 3 more, or whatever,
Yeah, that is interesting. I am worried a little bit because about Star Wars in general, because it's like we've gotten such a Star Wars overload recently.
Yeah.
We just finished up the Disney trilogy. Clone Wars had their encore season. Mandalorian's wrapping up, and then at Disney Investor Day, they're like, here's 10 other series coming out in the next 3 years. And I'm like, if you get anything in this wrong, you do know that the entire fan base is going to implode, right? Like, I'm as excited for Obi-Wan and Ahsoka as the next person, probably more so, because Ahsoka is one of my favorite characters. But I'm like, Acolyte, Visions, Bad Batch, Rogue Squadron, you really want to make sure you're doing all of this at the same time.
Yeah, it worries me because and that was part of the thing with Star Wars, like, where Solo didn't do that well. And Solo, I think, is better than some of the other Star Wars movies out there. But even with me, I was just like, and I've tried to watch it, and I was just like, so kind of like, I just got like Star Wars fatigue of going from Star Wars being like a special thing that you rarely got to like, okay, we're going to do a movie every year. So I do worry about that oversaturation too. And just like throwing everything and seeing what lands. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I do have to go in a little bit, but we have a couple of other comments really quick. Cademan says, good to see some RotoHackers. Yes, sir. He misses Judah. We do as well. And we're 2 away from 100 subscribers. We're so close. Spartan 22. Do I start Wilson versus the football team or Jared Goff against the Jets? I think I'm going Wilson. I know it's risky. I know he hasn't played great in bad matchups, but I'm scared that they're just going to run the football all over the Jets, and Goff is going to finish with 8 points. So I would go Wilson.
Yeah, it's hard for me to trust. It's a bad matchup for Wilson, but it's very hard for me to trust Goff.
And also, does he start Amari Cooper or Deontay Johnson against Cincy? This is tougher.
I think Amari. Amari, as bad as the Cowboys have been, he's been kind of the bright spot in that offense. Basically still getting double digits. He had a bad game against Philadelphia, but mostly, 10 or 5 straight games of double digits. I think he's pretty safe. So I would go Amari.
Yep, I think I would too. Deontay's sharing with a whole lot of people. Target shares kind of dipped as well, but Cooper's still getting at least red zone targets, and he's kind of Dalton's number 1 target as well. Doggy Man 100. Thanks for tuning into the show. Needs 2. Stephon Diggs, Kiki QT, T. Higgins, Rashard Higgins, and Sterling Shepard. For me, it's easily the first 2. Diggs is just obvious stardom for me. And then QT right after. What do you think, Jared?
Same. That's an easy one for me. Just same too. Diggs is every week. QT in this case. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Same. He also asked Jared Goff or Watson. I like Deshaun Watson. They're going to have a hard time running the football this week. He's going to need to throw it a lot. And the Rams like to run it if they can. If they're playing a tough run defense, they throw it. And if they're not, Goff throws 5 passes a game. So I go Deshaun Watson on this one.
Yeah, Goff's got a pretty low floor. I go Deshaun.
Yep. And Thomas H brings up for me AJ Northwestern's beating Ohio State 10-6. I'm going to try not to get excited. I'm going to try to temper my expectations. But this is exciting for me. Oh boy.
That'd be great. I'd be all for it. I don't even really dislike Ohio State or anything. It's just like I like to see upsets in college football. I mean, they're so, for a school like that to be to beat a powerhouse like Ohio State. Yeah, I'm all for that.
Oh my goodness, I'm a Northwestern fan. I mean, Georgia is always going to be my one and only, but I love Northwestern. So, oh man, all right. Thank you for letting me know, Thomas H. And we're about to hit the 2-hour mark for today, Jared. I think that wraps us up. We had a great comment section today. Thank you, everybody, for coming and tuning in with us. As usual, we love having the discussion with you guys. One more time, going to post our Discord in the chat. We always have we got a bunch of great guys just talking about fantasy and regular football in general. We just created the Josh Jacobs hate club after the joke he pulled on Instagram. So be sure to join that. Jared, you got anything left for us as we head into the fantasy football either championship or semifinal?
No, just good luck. If you made it there, congrats. That's this has been a hard year. This has been a tough year. Normally I get in about 2/3 of my teams, about half my teams got in this time. So this is it's a crazy year, tough year. So if you made it in, you should be proud of, not only making it in, but I mean, really like sticking with it for that long. So good luck, and hopefully next year will be better, but hopefully you rack up some bragging rights and a little maybe money if you're in some pro leagues before this season wraps up.
There you go. And for the RotoHackers, I'm AJ Herschel the Kid. That is the absolute stud, Mr. Number 1 seed himself. I'm just going to add something every season we do RotoHackers. Like every new season, the list is just going to get longer as we go.
There's a joke about that, and I know you haven't, I'm sure, seen Game of Thrones, but there's a character in Game of Thrones that's sort of this queen, and like her titles just keep like mounting, and so she's got this person who announces her, and every time like the list gets longer to where it almost becomes sort of a joke at the end, like let's get through these a little faster, so.
That's awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for another great episode. Hope you have a great day. Hope you win your games. Jared, good luck this week in the RotoHackers semifinal.
Do you really mean that, though?
Yes, of course I mean that. Of course I mean that. I mean, I'm already a 33-point underdog. I'm facing the most adversity I will all year.
Maybe you're gonna have your little Luke Skywalker moment. I'm basically the Dark Troopers. I'm basically the Dark Troopers, ready to just pound the door in and destroy you. And one of your players is going to be Luke Skywalker, and he's going to come rescue you at the last second.
Hey, stick with green. Devontae Adams is going to show up and just
go
through everybody.
It's possible. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on Tuesday. We always are here Tuesday nights, Saturday mornings, and afternoons. We'll see you guys next time.